Sony A7R3, is it worth the upgrade? Hey everybody, welcome back to the vlog. Once again, it's tea time, and today is a Sony day. Now, if you guys have been watching me for a while, you know that I am a fan of mirrorless, number one, and full frame mirrorless, even more so. All right. And Sony has that wrapped up, right, guys? They just have it wrapped up. I remember seeing the first Sony A7 back at Photo Plus Expo, that's going on actually right now in New York City many years ago. When the first one came out, I was looking at it, I'm like, wow, this thing's going to eventually replace the DSLR. And we're not there as of yet, but we're getting pretty close. And I've been following the camera from all of their iterations, their A7, the A7RII. Now, as of today, we have the A7R3 that's rolling out. And the question, of course, is it worth buying? You know, is the upgrade from the R2 to the R3 that big of a deal to really warrant an upgrade? Now, in the past, I've always said no. So we're going to see what we see with these specs, and then I'll give you my opinion. Instead of just going straight down the specs, I'm just going to tell you like things that are new to the camera or things that are the same and what I think are important. You can read just specs after specs after specs, but what does it mean, right? So for me, I kind of like want to tell you what the things mean and why I think they're important. So let me start out. I do feel that this camera is almost a A9 ripoff, right? Now, when I say that, obviously the body is different, but the internals are very similar. There's a lot of things that they're doing that they're getting right in the A9 that they're moving into this camera, and I'm really happy about that. Now, the one thing that stayed the same from the R2 and now the R3 is the sensor. It's the same 42 megapixel sensor. Now, people will be like, well, why in the heck would they do that? It doesn't make sense. Well, Sony said, hey, just wait. Just hold on a second. Everything around that sensor we've changed. The way we do the processing, the power behind the processing, the algorithms, everything has changed. And we're able to squeeze everything out of that 42 megapixel sensor. So there's no reason for us to get a new one. Okay, well, we'll see about that once we get a lot of these pictures, these real world pictures in here. Now, one of the things that changed, and I think that needed to change, is the battery. So if you're either a Sony shooter or you know one, you know that battery life is just a mega problem. I mean, it's just a big problem, okay? Especially if you're using the EVF, the electronic viewfinder, you got the screen going, you got all of this stuff going, and it just chews up the batteries. I mean, they're going like chiclets, right? You're popping in a chiclet, you're chewing on that, and you're putting in another battery, right? On and on and on. So you'll see a lot of the pro guys that are shooting Sony, they just have just a bag full of batteries. Well, this is going to change, right? So what they've done is they've moved the A9 battery into this camera. What that means is they had to rework the body, okay? They had to rework it. So the internal guts to this thing have changed, and they needed to accommodate that larger battery of the A9. And thank God they did. What happened was they went from like 270, let's call it an even 300 shots before the battery is dead. Now they're up to like 600 or 650 shots out of that battery. That is a godsend. And now what's even better, guys, is that you can now use the A9 grip. What is it, like a VG C3, whatever it is. Anyways, you could use that grip on this camera. So you could buy an A9 grip and just strap it onto this. What does that mean? Well, guys, that means that instead of 650 shots, you can double that. Now you're at 1,300 shots, okay, before having to switch out batteries. If you're a wedding guy, that is awesome, right? Because you're taking 1,000, 2,000, something like 3,000 shots during a wedding, right? It's nice to not have a ton of batteries you're constantly switching out, right? Now, the next thing is the AF system. Now, they have a hybrid AF system. What is that? Basically, they're doing contrast, autofocus detection, as well as phase detection. Now, what has happened is the phase detection side of that has remained the same. It is 399 points of phase detection. All right, not bad. Now, what has changed and what has mega changed is the contrast detection, guys. It's gone from 25 points of contrast detection all the way up to 425 points of contrast detection when it comes to AF. So what does that mean? What does that translate into? Basically, it should pull focus better. It should pull focus quicker. There's more points for it to look at. You have now the ability to kind of move that autofocus point to more spots to get it dialed into a better location. All right. You don't have to kind of get it to the right spot. You can get it to the exact spot. So this is really exciting. I like that a lot. And now what they've also said, which is even better, is that the speed in which that it's pulling focus is now double, right? You're looking at twice as fast, guys. That is fantastic. For me, you know, I'm an autofocus guy. I mean, I invented the focus pyramid, right? For autofocus lens calibration. I am a focus nerd. I think that focusing is the most important part of capturing an image, okay? Now, when I say that is, of course, you got composition, you have lighting, all the rest of the stuff. But if you take a picture and it is $1 million shot and you got your focus wrong, you can ball that picture up and chuck it into the waste can, right? Because it's now junk. People are like, oh yeah, in post-production you can fix it. Well, if you take a picture of someone and you're dialing into their eyes and you want their eyelashes dead sharp, and now later on in post-production you look at it and their ear is dead sharp and their eyelashes are now blurry. In post-production, you're not going to fix that. You can fake it a little bit, but you're never going to produce a crystal clear image of those eyelashes. It's just not going to happen. Okay, so for me, it's get it right in camera right away. So having something that can pull focus faster, better, with more points, that's what we're looking for. I think Sony's got it right when it comes to that. Now let's move on into the shutter. Now, this shutter will capture both electronically and mechanically. What does that mean? What does that afford us? Well, electronically means that you're going to be able to capture, let's say, the wedding guy will be able to capture silently, whereas someone that's shooting high-speed images like a car going by that needs a flash, they're going to be able to use a flash and sync it at 1/250 of a second. Now, what's more important here is you can do both mechanical and electronic at 10 frames per second. That is really good, guys. That's really good. Really, really nice. So, is this going to be like a game changer? No. But being able to capture at twice the speed of like an A9, like an A9 could only capture at like, I think it's 5 frames per second, right? Mechanically. This is doubling that. That is really, really good. Very, very impressive. Now, if you're a wedding guy, this is going to be good because you're going to be able to capture 10 frames per second and do it silently, right? Now, bear in mind, you might have issues with rolling shutter. I don't think that they addressed the rolling shutter problem like they did on the A9. They can't give you everything. You know, they can't give away the farm, the milk, the cow, everything, right? It's just not going to happen. So I think that's going to be a sacrifice. So if you are shooting silently, watch out for the rolling shutter. But the mechanical at 10 frames per second and be able to shoot flash at that speed, I think that is really, really great. Next, well, if you're shooting 10 frames per second, how many frames can you capture? Okay, that's the question. So my understanding is you'll be able to capture 28 uncompressed raw images before it has to buffer. That's pretty good. That is a lot. Just think about the amount of data at 42 megapixels. You'll be able to capture 28 before it buffers. That is really, really good. Now, moving on into the cards themselves. Now, we've always asked as professionals for 2 cards for redundancy, right? So we want to be able to write simultaneously to 2 cards. So if something goes wrong, something goes south with one of the cards, we don't lose the wedding or we don't lose the portrait shoot. We don't lose our shots, right? Sony addressed it with the A7R3. We now have 2 slots, right? The problem that I see here is they went with a UHS 1 for one slot and a UHS 2 for the other slot. Why? Why? I think that it's great that you have 2 slots in there, Sony, but God, we are 4th quarter of 2017. UHS 2 is the standard, and you know it, all right? You're not going to be upgrading this camera for another 2 years. And by then, people are going to look at UHS 1 like, what are you doing? Why are you using such a slow card? My personal opinion is throw in the extra 50 cents. I know it's not that. but throw in the couple of bucks and put 2 UHS 2 cards into it. Next, micro USB. Now this is really cool, guys. This means that we can actually plug in a powered micro USB cable into this camera and run it without the battery draining. This is awesome if you're shooting in studio, or maybe you're on location, you don't have to, you don't want to worry about the batteries going south. Maybe you're shooting video and it's like a long type of video where you're shooting, let's say, a seminar, and it's going to be an hour long or 2 hours long or whatever it is, and you don't want to worry about batteries. You can just plug in a micro USB and keep the camera running indefinitely. That is really cool. Now, I don't know about overheating, guys, but let's just call it indefinitely. I think that's really great. Also, what they've done is put in a USB-C port. Now, that is a standard. Everything has gone USB-C. It is fast as heck. And now what you can do with that is you can now tether through that connector. That is really great, especially as a studio shooter. All right. Now, on the back of the camera, guys, they've added a couple of features, a couple of buttons. Number one, they've added a C3 button right next to the menu button, which is really great. It's fully customizable. Also, they've moved the record button, your video record button, to the spot that it should have been since day one. And they have also added a toggle, a little joystick that you can dial in all those hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of autofocus points. That's really cool. Now, as far as the menu system itself, they've borrowed the entire menu system right out of the A9 and just revamped it. Let's say overhauled it. And I'm glad they did, because the UI is better now. It's quicker, it's cleaner, it just makes more sense. So the menu system is definitely better. What they've also done with the menu system is allow you to do customizations based on either video or still mode. That is great. So if you want something to do X, Y, and Z, but you want it to do it for video type of things, you can set it, and then also in stills. So once you change modes, those buttons change also. I think that is fantastic. They needed to do that, and they did it, and I think that it is great. A lot of people are going to use that. I know I would. Now, moving on to video. For me, video is very, very important, and some companies get it right, some companies don't. Now, remember, we're shooting full frame now. They are giving us full frame 4K. That is full frame, full sensor, 4K, not cropped, at 24 frames and 30 frames per second. I would like to have seen, like Panasonic's GH5, I would like to have seen 60 frames per second at 4K. But they didn't do it. Why? I don't know. I would love to have seen them do it. Now, they did give us 1080p at 120 frames per second. That is perfect for slow-mo. I use that all the time. I think that's fantastic. I think the mode to look out for, though, is the Super 35 mode. Remember, you're taking a big sampling and then downsampling it. I think that the Super 35 is going to be absolutely beautiful. Absolutely awesome. So we'll soon find out. Next, in-camera 5-axis image stabilization. So instead of you having to worry about getting image stabilization inside of your lens, it is built into the camera, 5-axis. Now, what is great is the lenses can be lighter weight, number one. Also, if you have lenses that do not have image stabilization in them, since it's in camera, you can use those also and still get all of the benefit of that stabilization. Now, moving on. They talked about IAF. Now, this is a big, big issue. We know that Canon, with their dual pixel system, is just amazing at just tracking, at autofocus, at locking into eyes and tracking. Well, their IAF system now has been overhauled and revamped, and they said it is much, much better at locking into someone's eyes and not fading back and forth into the background. We've saw that a lot of times with some of the older Sony cameras where it would lock in and then it would lose focus and lock in and lose focus. Canon really didn't do that very much with their dual pixel. So supposedly their IAF has addressed this. They have revamped it and it is improved. That is awesome. Now let's talk about the negatives. Normally I'd come in with a list of negatives on the camera and say, these are the things that I think that should have been addressed. Now, there's a couple of things, but there's really not a lot, guys. There really isn't. They've hit a lot of the problem. Let's call them the pain points, okay? You know, of course, there's a couple of negatives. Like for me, I would like to have seen 60 frames per second in 4K. I think that would have been great. I also would like to have seen UHS 2 slots of it instead of one of them being a UHS 1. But there's so little negative that I'd have to say here, and so much positive, that normally in most situations when someone says, hey, should I upgrade to this? I'm like, yeah, no, just buy some lenses. You know, camera bodies are like chewing gum, you know, camera bodies are like toilet paper. You get rid of them all the time, right? And the value of them is basically nothing, right? Just buy better lenses. In this case, it is my recommendation to make the upgrade. I think there's enough new that's going on in this camera and enough updates and upgrades to this camera and just the battery life alone, I think that is well worth the $3,199 that you would pay for this upgrade. In my opinion, your current A7 should go up on the chopping block, get rid of it, and pick up this new A7R3. That's my opinion. I want to know what your thoughts are. Do you agree? Do you not agree? What do you think about what this camera can do and what can't it do? Also, do you think that this cannibalizes their flagship A9 line? Do you think so? I don't know. Possibly. Anyways, I want to hear from you. As always, if you enjoyed this content, throw me a big thumbs up. That would be awesome. Also, don't forget, smash that subscribe button so you can get all of my content whenever it becomes available. And head over to my website, JCristina.com, where you can find a lot of photography tools I've invented for photographers just like you. That's it, guys. I'm out of here for yet another vlog. I hope you enjoyed the content. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.